The wind howled like a banshee through the skeletal trees, whipping snow across the windshield in furious sheets. The headlights of my old sedan barely pierced the storm, their dim glow swallowed by the relentless white. I clenched the wheel tighter, my knuckles whitening as the tires skidded dangerously on the icy road. It was Christmas Eve, 1933, and what should have been a simple drive to my sister's home was turning into a battle for survival. When the car sputtered and stalled, the engine giving one last pitiful wheeze, I knew I was in trouble. I stepped out into the cold, the biting wind slashing at my exposed face. The road was a void in either direction, the storm erasing everything but the sound of the gale. My breath fogged the air as I scanned the horizon. Then I saw it, a faint light flickering in the distance. I trudged through knee-deep snow, drawn to the glow. My body ached, every step a struggle, but the light held me like a beacon, a promise of warmth in the storm's icy grip. When the silhouette of a large building emerged, relief surged through me. An inn. Its carved wooden sign swung violently in the wind, the words, "Frostwood Retreat," barely legible beneath a thick coat of frost. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and I was greeted by a rush of warm air carrying the scent of pine and something sweet. Mulled wine, perhaps. The interior was immaculate, a strange contrast to the raging storm outside. A roaring fire bathed the room in golden light, casting long shadows that danced on the polished wooden floor. Garlands of holly and mistletoe adorned the walls, and a grand Christmas tree stood in the corner, its ornaments gleaming like tiny stars. "Welcome, traveler," came a voice, startling me. A man stood behind the front desk, his face gaunt but smiling. His dark suit was pressed to perfection, and his pale hands rested on the counter with an almost statuesque stillness. "You've arrived just in time. The storm is quite unforgiving." My car broke down," I stammered, shaking off the snow. "Do you have a room?" "Of course," he said, his smile never wavering. "I am Mr. Grayson, and this is my wife, Eleanor." A woman appeared at his side, her movements as smooth and deliberate as his. Her features were delicate, framed by hair the color of spun silver, but her eyes seemed strangely flat, like glass marbles. "Please," she said in a soft, lilting tone, "make yourself at home." Their hospitality should have been comforting, but something about their manner unsettled me. Their words felt rehearsed, their cheer hollow. Still, the fire's warmth was too inviting to resist. I accepted their offer, following Eleanor as she led me to a room upstairs. The guest room was cozy, its bed piled with thick quilts. A platter of biscuits and a steaming mug of cocoa awaited me on the nightstand. Yet, as the door closed behind her, the air seemed to grow colder, the silence of the room oppressive. I glanced out the frosted window, but the storm showed no signs of relenting. As exhaustion overtook me, I lay down, the softness of the bed drawing me into uneasy sleep. A sudden noise jolted me awake. The room was pitch black, save for the faint, flickering light of the fireplace casting shadows across the ceiling. My heart thudded in my chest as I strained to identify the sound. Footsteps. They were faint at first, a rhythmic tap-tap-tap that seemed to come from the hallway. I told myself it was just another guest, perhaps an early riser or someone pacing with a bout of insomnia. But the footsteps didn't fade. They circled, slow and deliberate, pausing outside my door before retreating. "Hello?" I called out, my voice hoarse with sleep. Silence greeted me. I wrapped the quilt around my shoulders and stepped into the hall. It was empty, the floorboards beneath my feet creaking softly as I ventured toward the staircase. The inn was eerily quiet, the air thick with an unsettling stillness. A glint of light caught my eye, drawing me toward the lounge. The fireplace there was still burning, its flames casting a golden glow over the room. On the mantelpiece, a cluster of framed photographs caught my attention. They were old, the edges of the frames tarnished. The images depicted a family, a man, a woman, and a young boy, standing in front of the very tree that now adorned the lounge. Their faces were solemn, their expressions unreadable. Something about the boy's face tugged at my memory, but I couldn't place it. I turned away, unease prickling the back of my neck. That's when I heard it again. The footsteps. This time they were closer, heavier, echoing against the walls. I spun around expecting to see someone, but the hallway was empty. My pulse quickened as a cold draft brushed past me, though the windows were shut tight. I hurried back to my room, locking the door behind me. As I climbed into bed, my eyes lingered on the clock on the nightstand. It read 2:13 a.m., but the hands weren't moving. Sleep didn't come easily. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant rustle of wind seemed to carry a sinister weight. And just before I drifted off, I thought I heard faint laughter, high-pitched and childlike, coming from somewhere deep within the inn. The morning light did little to ease my unease. The storm had buried the world outside in snowdrifts so high that the inn felt like an island adrift in an endless sea of white. The Graysons greeted me with their unwavering smiles as I descended the stairs for breakfast, but I couldn't ignore the weight in the air, as if the building itself was holding its breath. "Did you sleep well?" Eleanor asked, placing a plate of steaming eggs and toast before me. "Yes," I lied, forcing a tight smile. My gaze flicked to the window, where frost spiderwebbed across the glass in intricate, almost deliberate patterns. It looked like writing, but the letters were fragmented, too chaotic to read. "There's a lovely library just down the hall," Mr. Grayson said, gesturing to a door near the parlor. "It might provide a distraction while the storm clears." I thanked him, but felt no comfort in his suggestion. Still, my curiosity won out, and after breakfast, I ventured into the library. It was a beautiful room, its shelves packed with leather-bound volumes that smelled of age and secrets. A mahogany desk stood by the window, where a single candle flickered weakly against the storm's gloom. As I browsed the shelves, my fingers brushing the spines of books, a thin journal caught my eye. Its cover was unmarked, its pages yellowed and brittle. I opened it carefully and began to read. December 24th, 1919. "The snow has trapped us here, but the innkeepers assure us we're safe. There's something off about this place. The way the Graysons move, their eyes like glass. And the guests, the others, they don't speak to us. They just sit, staring. December 25th, 1919. I woke to footsteps in the hall. My wife says it's just the wind, but I know better. Something walks these halls at night. December 26th, 1919. They invited us to a feast tonight. The table was set for dozens, but there were only the two of us. The food was plentiful, but tasted of ash. I can't shake the feeling we're not alone, even though we are the only guests." My breath quickened as I skimmed the rest of the entries, which became increasingly frantic, each one scrawled in a trembling hand. "Do not join the feast," the final entry warned. "No matter how kind they seem, the Graysons are not what they appear. This place is a trap, and the feast is the snare." I slammed the journal shut, my hands trembling. The words felt like a scream from the past, echoing into my present. I turned to leave, but froze. The door I had entered through was slightly ajar, and in the gap I saw an eye, cold, gray, unblinking. "Enjoying the collection?" Eleanor's voice drifted through the door, smooth and polite, but tinged with something that made my skin crawl. "Yes," I managed, stuffing the journal under my arm as I stepped into the hall. Her face was perfectly composed, but I caught a flicker of something in her expression, something sharp and predatory. That evening, as the storm raged outside, the Graysons invited me to dinner. The dining room was a vision of festivity. Candles burned low in ornate candelabras, their light reflecting off polished silverware and crystal goblets. The table was laden with dishes that looked as though they had been plucked straight from a magazine. A roasted turkey glistening with golden skin, bowls of vibrant vegetables, and an array of desserts that seemed too extravagant for the occasion. "Come," Mr. Grayson urged, pulling out a chair for me. "You're our guest of honor tonight." I hesitated, the warning from the journal ringing in my ears. "Do not join the feast." "I'm not very hungry," I said, trying to sound polite. "Nonsense," Eleanor said, her smile sharper now. "It's Christmas Eve. We must celebrate." The air in the room seemed to grow heavier as I sat down, the chair creaking under me. I felt the weight of eyes, but when I glanced around, we were alone. Yet, the room was filled with the unmistakable hum of presence, faint whispers at the edge of hearing, like voices trapped behind a veil. I tried to focus on the food, but it was wrong. Too perfect, too vibrant. When I cut into the turkey, the juices ran red, staining my plate. The vegetables smelled sweet, but when I tasted them, they were bitter, like decay. "Do you like it?" Eleanor asked, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Yes," I lied, setting down my fork. The whispers grew louder, and when I glanced at the empty seats around the table, my stomach turned. Shapes flickered in the corner of my vision, shadowy figures that seemed to shift and shimmer in the candlelight. One moment the chairs were empty, the next they were filled with pale, gaunt faces, their hollow eyes fixed on me. I pushed back from the table. "I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well." The Graysons rose in unison, their movements almost mechanical. "You can't leave now," Mr. Grayson said, his voice void of warmth. Panic set in, and I bolted for the door. My heart pounded as I raced through the halls, the shadows lengthening and twisting around me. Every door I tried led me back to the dining room, where the Graysons stood waiting, their smiles widening into something monstrous. "You've already joined us," Eleanor said, her voice echoing as if from a great distance. "There is no escape." I pulled the journal from my coat, flipping frantically to the page about the ritual. The words blurred as the whispers grew deafening, but I found it, a way to confront the master of the inn and break the curse. It would require summoning the spirit tied to this place, the original owner. The walls seemed to close in as I began the incantation. The Graysons hissed, their forms flickering like failing projections. The shadows grew solid, reaching for me, but I kept chanting, my voice rising above the cacophony. The air turned icy, and a deep, guttural growl filled the room as the true master of the Frostwood Retreat appeared. The room plunged into darkness, the flickering candlelight extinguished by a wind that seemed to rise from nowhere. The air grew thick and suffocating, and a low, resonant growl reverberated through the walls. My breath came in shallow gasps as the true master of the Frostwood Retreat revealed itself. At first, it was a shadow, a mass of swirling blackness that coalesced into a towering figure. Its body was skeletal yet grotesquely stretched, its limbs too long, and its face a hollow void save for two glowing pinpoints of light where eyes should have been. The air around it shimmered with an unnatural cold, and the smell of decay rolled off it in waves. "You dare summon me?" The voice was a guttural snarl, layered and inhuman, filling the room as if spoken by a chorus of the damned. The walls seemed to vibrate with its rage. I clutched the journal in trembling hands, forcing my gaze upward to meet those terrible eyes. "You're the one who cursed this place," I managed, my voice breaking. "I know what you've done. Binding the Graysons, trapping anyone who stumbles here. I won't let you take me." The creature tilted its head, a grotesque parody of curiosity. "You think you can defy me? You've already dined at my table, taken your place among my flock." "No!" I shouted, the word tearing from my throat. My voice felt small, fragile against the crushing weight of its presence. "There's still a way to stop you. The journal." The creature's laughter was a sound of pure malice, low and echoing, the kind of laugh that burrows into your bones and freezes you from the inside out. "You think the ramblings of a dead man can save you?" Its hand shot out, impossibly fast. Long, skeletal fingers curled around the journal, yanking it from my grasp. I lunged for it, but the creature tossed it into the fireplace with a flick of its wrist. The dry, brittle pages ignited instantly, the flames licking hungrily at the words I'd pinned my hope on. Despair closed in, but a faint memory flickered in my mind. The heart of the inn, the source of its power. The journal had mentioned it in passing. A clock, frozen at the hour of the original deaths. My eyes darted around the room, searching. There it was. On the far wall, shrouded in shadow, hung an ornate grandfather clock. Its face was cracked, the hands permanently stuck at midnight. The pendulum, though still, seemed to radiate a faint, pulsating glow, as if the clock itself were alive. The creature noticed my gaze and snarled, its towering form surging forward to block my path. "You will not touch it!" The shadows writhed, stretching toward me like living things, their icy touch clawing at my ankles. I kicked free, the cold biting deep into my skin as I stumbled toward the clock. My fingers closed around the fire poker I had dropped earlier, its metal biting into my palm. With all the strength I could muster, I swung. The poker struck the clock's glass face, shattering it into a cascade of jagged shards. A piercing scream erupted from the creature, so loud and otherworldly that I clamped my hands over my ears. The pendulum began to swing erratically, faster and faster, as cracks spiderwebbed across the clock's wooden frame. "No!" the creature roared, its form flickering violently. "You cannot break the cycle!" I raised the poker again, driving it into the clock's exposed workings. The gears screeched as they ground to a halt, and the glowing pendulum stilled. The creature's howls became a chorus of anguished cries, and the walls of the inn trembled as if the building itself were in agony. The shadows began to dissipate, retreating into the corners of the room. The air grew lighter, the oppressive cold lifting. I staggered back, watching as the creature's form collapsed inward, folding into itself like smoke drawn into a vacuum. A deafening silence followed. The inn was empty now, its oppressive weight replaced by a strange stillness. The Graysons were gone, their forms erased as if they'd never existed. The dining room, once vibrant and warm, was now dark and dusty, the table bare. Only the shattered remains of the clock bore witness to what had occurred. I stepped outside, blinking against the pale dawn light. The storm had passed, leaving the world blanketed in untouched snow. I stood there for a long time, the stillness of the morning broken only by the distant cry of a crow. Though I was free, a lingering unease clung to me. The mark of the frostwood retreat felt etched into my very soul. I had escaped, but the memory of those glowing eyes, of the voices and the shadows, would never fade. As I trudged through the snow toward the distant road, A single thought haunted me. I had shattered the clock, broken the cycle. But curses rarely die so easily, and I knew, deep down, that some part of the Frostwood retreat was still watching, waiting